hell are Labour doing? Asks Unite General Secretary Sharon Graham. Yes, Britain is broken. Yes, the Tories are to blame. But Labour is in government now and they cannot keep making everyday people pay. Sharon Graham joins me live. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. How is Labour making everyday people pay?
Well, look, I think when Labour got into government, people wanted change. There were promises made in relation to industry, in terms of British industry and investing in British jobs. And also there was promises made in terms of make work pay. Instead, what we got within weeks was pensioners being attacked by the winter fuel allowance being scrubbed. Now we have people with disabilities attacked. And there is a real scratching of heads that how can you have that type of thing going on? And you've got areas like Grangemouth and Lindsay going to the wall and Labour sitting there sucking their thumb. And what people are looking for is real change. And that's what I think Labour needs to do, because if they don't do that, then workers will look elsewhere. That's just the reality. One
of the biggest impacts on workers, particularly small businesses, has been the increase in national insurance for employers. Do you disagree with that rise?
Yes, and at the time, I actually made it really clear that I thought that was a workers' tax. You know, I negotiate with employers every day, pretty much. For 35 years, I've been negotiating with employers. And when you have an increase in NI, then obviously that comes to the bargaining table. There's no doubt about that. So to me, that was an error that should not have happened. What they need to do now is to look at how they are going to put some of this right. They need to invest in British industry, in British jobs. They need to make sure that make work pay, which is what they promised British people through the Employment Rights Act, that gets put through in full. If they don't do these things, then people will move away because, of course, they're not seeing this as being a Labour government.
Imagine being the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, sitting in the high-backed chair of 10 Downing Street and realising the very people who paid for your seat are currently holding a raffle to see who gets to evict you. Sir Keir Starmer is currently finding out that in the world of British politics, your friends are often just enemies who haven't finished sharpening their knives yet. This week, the air in Westminster didn't just turn chilly, it turned positively glacial as Sharon Graham, the General Secretary of Unite the Union, Labour's biggest and most influential financial backer, stepped onto the public stage and essentially performed a political exorcism on Sir Keir's leadership. She didn't just criticise him, she described his removal as inevitable. Not possible, not under consideration, but a mathematical certainty. It is the kind of festive greeting that makes a lump of coal look like a diamond. We are talking about a full-scale declaration of war from the shop floor to the cabinet table, and the timing could not be worse for a Prime Minister whose approval ratings are currently competing with the temperature of a North Sea winter. Quick favour, if you're loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It's free, takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show. The union boss who stopped whispering. For months, the rumours of discontent within the Labour ranks have been like the hum of a faulty refrigerator. Noticeable, annoying, but something you hoped you could ignore. Well, Sharon Graham just walked into the kitchen and smashed the fridge with a sledgehammer. Writing in the Times and appearing across the airwaves this December 30th, the Unite chief didn't mince her words. 2. She accused the government of being rudderless and warned that if Starmer doesn't change course, he is sowing the seeds of his own destruction. 3. It is a brutal assessment from a woman who represents 1.2 million workers and controls a multi-million-pound political fund. 4. The most cutting part of Graham's intervention wasn't just the attack on Starmer's personality, but the total dismissal of his entire front bench. She explicitly stated that replacing Keir with a continuity candidate like Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting or Andy Burnham won't cut it. In her view, the Labour Party is stuck in a doom loop of austerity light. 5. It is a staggering analogy, describing the government as a plane caught in a terminal nosedive while the pilots argue about who gets to wear the captain's hat. Graham is demanding a total ideological U-turn, calling for a wealth tax on the mega-rich and a move away from self-harming net zero targets that don't come with industrial investment. 6. She is essentially telling the Prime Minister, we didn't pay for a slightly more polite version of the Tories, we paid for a revolution, and we want our money back. This isn't just a spat over a Christmas card, it is a fundamental breakdown of the special relationship that built the Labour Party. For over a century, the unions have been the spine of the movement, but Sharon Graham is signalling that the spine is ready to walk out the door. Tensions have been simmering since the summer of 2024, when Starmer's government attempted to axe winter fuel payments for pensioners, a move so unpopular it forced a humiliating U-turn and left a permanent scar on his relationship with the left. Now, with reports that Unite might hold a historic vote to disaffiliate from the party entirely, the very survival of the Labour machine is on the line. If the money stops, the music stops, and Keir Starmer might find himself playing musical chairs in an empty room.
Unite. Friends, the 2008 financial crash was a disaster caused by greed. Yet few experts saw it coming. Just weeks before, the Bank of England clapped the city like seals. And without any serious questions being asked, let alone any criminal conviction being sought, the bankers were bailed out using taxpayers' money, and how the champagne must have flowed. 10 years of austerity followed. Jobs, homes, pay, services, all lost, decimated. Workers and communities paying the price. Then another crisis dawns. COVID, a once-in-a-100-year event. While the rich sat at home with parcels arriving by the hour, everyday people went out to deal with the crisis in PPE that did not work. Nurses, supermarket workers, bus workers, and again, workers and communities paid the price. And now we have a different crisis, a black hole that must be filled. 22 billion, 50 billion, take your pick. The solution this time? Workers pitted against pensioners, communities pitted against the disabled. Different government, same decisions. We have no choice. That's what we've been told. We are stuck in the cycle of a broken system where everyday people always pay. Friends, why? Why? Why is this inevitable? Of course there is a choice. Look at this room. We are the Labour movement. We are the stake in the ground. This is supposed to be a Labour government. Instead of picking the pockets of pensioners, tax the rich. Instead of letting energy prices spiral out of control, renationalise our energy. Friends, what is wrong with these choices? Friends, look, I don't understand, and people do not understand what is going on here. Bankers given back their bonuses. Food prices are up by 38% and rising, while Tesco has profits in 1 year of £3.1 billion. It is obscene. Friends, where is the off button?
Delegate, that's time.
Where is the change?
That is time, Delegate.
Really?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll get to the last bit then,
Sorry.
shall I? Friends, it can be done. It must be done. People are crying out for us to redefine our story, rediscover our hinterland. We get one shot. Let's put our arms around the working class
Okay,
and
that's
be
time,
Labour.
Delegate.
Solidarity.
That is time, Delegate.
The doom loop and the ghost of industrial past. To understand why Sharon Graham is so furious, you have to look at the vision she believes is missing. She pointed out that Britain led the first industrial revolution, but is currently nowhere in the fourth. It is a relatable analogy for anyone who has watched our domestic manufacturing crumble, while the government focuses on fiscal rules that feel like they were written by a Victorian accountant. Graham's argument is that Starmer is too embarrassed to be the voice of workers, preferring the company of business lobbyists and billionaire donors. She is painting a picture of a prime minister who has forgotten who invited him to the dance. The doom loop she describes is one where the government stays terrified of the markets, refuses to borrow for investment, and keeps the personal tax allowance frozen until 2030, effectively picking the pockets of the very people who voted for change. 10 to the union grassroots, Starmer's tough choices look an awful lot like the same choices made by the last 14 years of Conservative rule. When the General Secretary of your biggest union says the country is rudderless, she isn't just insulting your navigational skills, she's suggesting the crew is about to mutiny. And the mutiny might be closer than Starmer thinks. Just 2 weeks ago, Unison, another union heavyweight, elected a fierce critic of the Prime Minister, Andrea Egan, as their leader, ousting a Starmer ally. 11. It is a pincer movement. On one side, you have the industrial might of Unite. On the other, the public sector power of Unison. Both are now led by people who view the Prime Minister not as a leader to be followed, but as a problem to be solved. The energy in the Labour movement has shifted from victory at any cost to what on earth did we win?
Suggestion in the last few days since Angela Rayner's departure that the Employment Rights Bill gets watered down, you say would be potentially a fatal mistake for Labour in a second term.
Yes, I mean, look, already you've got a situation where it has been watered down. In July of this year, fire and rehire, they changed the legislation so fire and rehire could be used against councils in bankruptcy, for example. Now, when workers are told that fire and rehire is banned, zero-hour contracts are banned, when they're told these things and then they go to avail themselves of a contract that is not a zero-hours contract, then they're going to feel duped, they're going to feel lied to. So it's not as billed. That's the problem. The Employment Rights Act is no longer not as billed.
Is Keir Starmer trustworthy?
Well, look, I mean, I'm not going to get into sort of personality traits of Keir Starmer, but what I do know is this.
Do you trust him?
I think he's making the wrong decisions. I genuinely believe he's making the wrong decisions. How in Britain have we had 2 oil refineries out of 6? We've only got 6. How have we got 2 oil refineries going to the wall? And the answer when I speak to government...
Because they don't like oil. We've got to green the electricity grid by 2030.
Yeah, indeed. But of course, if you want to have, you can't let go of one rope before you've got hold of another. If you want to be green by 2030, then you need a plan in order to make sure that we are self-sustaining, that we're not. I mean, how can we have a situation where we're going to cut jobs in Britain, but we're going to import fuel? I mean, that is ridiculous. I mean, that's not green, importing fuel. And so nobody understands the plan, and workers' jobs are going to the wall.
The May bloodbath, a deadline for departure. As if the union revolt wasn't enough, Sir Keir is staring down the barrel of the May local elections. In the world of politics, local elections are the ultimate health check, and the prognosis for Labour is looking distinctly terminal. Analysts are already predicting a bloodbath in Wales and Scotland, with recent polling suggesting Labour could be wiped out in areas they have held for generations. 12-1 survey even suggested they would return just 3 Scottish MPs if a general election were held tomorrow. 13. It is the kind of data that makes backbench MPs start looking for the exit signs and updating their LinkedIn profiles. The suspense is building because everyone knows the night of the long knives usually happens right after a bad set of results. Sharon Graham's comments have provided the intellectual cover for the plotters. By saying a change of leader is inevitable, she has given permission for the likes of Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham to start measuring the curtains in number 10, even if she thinks they aren't the answer either. It is a Shark Tank environment. If the local elections go as badly as predicted, the agonising Graham mentioned about whether, when and who will replace the Prime Minister will move from the tea rooms to the front pages. Starmer's defence has always been that he is cleaning up the mess, and that stability is his greatest achievement. But as Graham pointed out, stability without vision is just stagnation. You can't tell a worker whose wages are flatlining and whose bills are skyrocketing that they should be grateful the Prime Minister is sensible. The public is losing patience, the unions are losing faith, and his own party is losing its nerve. It is a high-speed collision between the adult-in-the-room strategy and the reality of a country that wants a pulse, not just a plan. The wealth tax versus the Treasury Guard. At the heart of this exposure is a fundamental disagreement about money. Sharon Graham wants a wealth tax. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, wants fiscal stability. 14. It is the classic battle between the heart and the calculator of the Labour Party. Graham argues that the mega-rich have escaped the crisis they caused, while workers are carrying the can for a stuttering economy. 15. She wants the government to borrow to invest in the fourth industrial revolution, green steel, defence industries and high-tech manufacturing. 16. But the Treasury, under Reeves, is locked into a set of fiscal rules that Graham describes as self-imposed and not real. 17. She reminded the public that in 1945, Britain had double the debt-to-GDP ratio we have now, yet we built the NHS and the welfare state. 18. Her message is clear. If Attlee could do it in the ruins of a world war, why can't you do it now? It is a powerful, relatable analogy that makes Starmer's austerity light look cowardly. By framing the debate this way, she has exposed the Prime Minister as a man who is more afraid of the Office for Budget Responsibility than he is of the people who elected him. This ideological chasm is why a simple change of face won't work. If the policy doesn't change, the doom loop continues. Graham is warning that the public will not thank the party for parliamentary manoeuvrings and political shenanigans if the big job of fixing the country isn't being delivered. 19. She is essentially calling Starmer's bluff. He spent years moving the party to the centre to win an election. Now he has to find a way to govern that doesn't feel like a betrayal to the people who funded his journey there, sowing the seeds of destruction. So, where does this leave the man at the top? Keir Starmer is currently presiding over a government that is being described by its own allies as failing. Of the inevitability of his replacement is now a mainstream talking point, not a fringe conspiracy. Every time he stands at the dispatch box, the ghost of Sharon Graham's inevitable quote will be hovering over his shoulder. He is a prime minister who has lost the narrative, lost the unions, and is rapidly losing the public. The coming year 2026 is set to be the most volatile in recent memory. If the government does not depart from its current path, as Graham warned, the seeds of its own destruction will start to bloom into a full-scale leadership crisis. 21. The British report will be here to document every leaf and branch of that collapse, whether it is a night of the long knives in June or a slow, painful decline toward the next general election. The exposure of Keir Starmer has begun in earnest, and the person holding the flashlight is the very woman who was supposed to be his greatest ally. It is witty, it is bold, and for Sir Keir, it is an absolute nightmare before the new year. But for us, it is a front-row seat to the most dramatic political fallout of the decade. As the unions prepare for a potential split, and the local elections loom like a dark cloud over Westminster, the only thing that is inevitable is that things are going to get a lot worse for number 10 before they get any better. Thank you for watching.